Hello, hello, friends. How are you all doing? So today, it's like 7:30 in the morning. Coffee ain't doing it for me right now. So one of my guests, William Brenham, came on. Awesome dude. I definitely recommend you go back and find his shows because we talk about some mindset and philosophies and wow. But the one he told me about is his Navy SEAL CBD energy drink. Ignore the fancy Navy SEAL part, but it is for anyone, athletes, entrepreneurs, every other day person. Like, this stuff, it has all the spectrums, all the electrolytes, all the A through Z vitamins, if that's even a thing. And that is how I am getting through this crush of a editing session because I am incorporating YouTube videos now, and that's going to be interesting. So, William is an awesome dude. He normally does not give big promos off, maybe like 10-15% if he really likes you. For us, we got a special highest he will pretty much go 20% off, promo code JBolton. If you got a spare like $80, you got great healthy energy for the next month. So definitely give that a try. Now I'm going to go back to editing because I'm still figuring out YouTube. Have fun.
Welcome to the Josh Bolton Show, where we dive into interesting and inspiring conversations. And now, your host, Josh Bolton.
Hello,
Must be Josh.
Yes, I am. You must be Matthew.
How are you?
Doing pretty good, actually. How's your day going?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
You're on the other side of the pond, huh?
I'm a bit away from you, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, it's around the evening time for you, like 4 or 5?
No, it's not that bad. It's what time is it now? 1 in the morning.
Holy shit, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm quite used to it, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I've been living in Singapore since 96.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to work with America, which you have to in the world, it's plenty of time to get to work on American time. So it's not that uncommon.
Okay. So then, I was looking up some work. So I looked into your book and all that, but what do you do specifically as a CEO of your business?
Sorry, I missed that. Josh, what did you say?
I was looking into your book and I was checking up and we are good and all that, but I'm like, you said you're a CEO. What are you CEO of?
I run a company called Nutrition Innovation.
Okay.
And it's a food technology company, which is got some revolutionary products in food science, looking at sugar reduction, anti-diabetes products, and really just trying to attack obesity and diabetes around the world with technology which retrofits into the sugar industry. Yeah, healthier sugars, healthier and less.
I'm curious what the healthier alternatives are because I like my sweet stuff, but I don't like gaining the weight.
Yeah, I know. So I think there's a couple of things, particularly with to dive into a conversation with kind of sugar. So first of all, the world has a lot of over-processed, over-refined added sugars.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, yeah.
And but the first thing is if you actually go back to the sugar cane crop, it's actually a naturally complex plant. So think of the sugar cane crop as like an apple. An apple is actually 10% sugar. If you were to refine an apple down to sucrose, you'd get a similar product. So if you go back to sugarcane crop, the crop is actually naturally, exquisite, and it's got these antioxidants and polyphenols in the sugarcane plant, which have been in there for forever. If you leave those compounds in the sugar, it slows down the metabolism of sucrose and slows down the transport of glucose. So they're naturally abundant. They're in the sugarcane crop. But for the last 400 or 500 years, the industry's been seeing these antioxidants as a waste stream. So they take them out of the crystal and they put them off to fertilize and they put them off to animal feed. But if you keep them in the sugar and you keep them abundant as they are in the crop, you can actually slow down metabolism of sucrose and by about 30 to 40%. So
that's incredible.
It's still sugar, it's still sweet, but your body's going to absorb less of it because your body can't break down, because fundamentally your body can't actually absorb sucrose. It has to break it down to glucose and fructose in order to get it into your body. And there's a little bond between that molecule, the sucrose molecule, and the antioxidants, the polyphenols in sugarcane, actually interfere with the body's ability to break that down. So more of the sucrose is just transported into your intestines. And a couple of good things with that. What that will do for you as well is actually be a fuel for the microbiome.
Okay.
So white refined sugar gets absorbed into your bloodstream. You get that sugar rush and that sugar spike, but it actually doesn't go down to your large intestines. So it's not feeding all the microbes in your large intestines. So just leaving these compounds in the crystal, you can slow everything down, and it becomes naturally more complex. And so think brown rice, brown bread. Most carbohydrates have a more complex variant, which is slower to digest, except for sugar. And sugar's got a white refined sugar. Now, most of the brown sugars you'll eat in America are white refined sugar, and then they put molasses back over the top so it looks brown. So it's not actually the real deal. So we have technology which helps the sugar industry look for these compounds and keep them in the crystal. And then we have a secondary technology, which if you think of sugar, which makes up a chocolate, it's like bricks, and maybe chocolate is 45% sugar. So if you take all that sugar out, you don't have a chocolate bar anymore. So sugar is a bulk filler, right? But if you could change the structure of those little crystals, and so that they're hollow inside, you can still make the chocolate, but with much less sugar. And so we have a technology which makes a honeycomb structure inside a sugar crystal. And so therefore you think of the outside of the crystal as being sugar, so you taste it still tastes like sugar, but the inside being a honeycomb. And so there's like micro air pockets in that crystal. And so therefore you're actually going to still build the same chocolate bar, but you're going to use much less sugar to do it. And so that'll be about 30 to 40% reduction in sugar just to make the same chocolate bar. So there's two separate technologies we have in that area, which really kind of help the world have a better path towards foods they like, sweetness they like, but substantially less sugar and better sugar in the process.
I'm just curious, how would that apply for like something like Coke, or that's the sugar structure is mainly more for like?
It's definitely for foods.
Solid foods,
ice creams, chocolates, biscuits, cereals, breads, protein bars, those types of structures. In a beverage, you can actually get zero sugar products already. I mean, so most of the zero sugar Coke, and they put a lot of artificial sugars in there and intense sweetness in there. And they're sometimes 4 to maybe 1,000 times sweeter than the sugar, and they give that kind of metallic aftertaste. But unfortunately, they're not bulk fillers. So it's very hard to take those types of sweeteners that you can use in a beverage and take them off into a food, because they don't perform the same function. So in a food, sugar is a binder, it's a filler, and it's also a preservative. So if you take sugar out of a food, the biscuit falls apart. And so the sweeteners that you can use in a Coke or in a beverage don't really work too well in a food, which is part of a problem. So that's what we're trying to solve, and that technology is called New Cane.
Interesting.
And,
interesting. Yeah, like I was saying, I looked into your stuff, but I was like, I couldn't fully figure out your thing. That's awesome.
It's I can't take credit for it. So I'm the CEO, but there's two founders, and they're both scientists.
Okay.
And they're both geniuses. And one's a doctor of pharmacology, and one's a doctor of cardiology. So Dr. David Kanar and Dr. Greg Zito.
That's
and
awesome.
what they do is they approach food as medicine, and they're looking kind of into food chemistry, and they just ask questions. Why do we eat so much processed sugar? What's the problem? And can we go back upstream and solve those technical problems so that we can have benefits downstream? So it's a really interesting and powerful kind of technology, which helped them move around the world. And it started in Australia. We've now launched in through Southeast Asia, particularly in Malaysia. We're working on Africa at the moment. We're just worked in Brazil and El Salvador, and that's important for America because sugar needs to have access into America, and America doesn't grow that much sugar anymore. It's mostly comes from Brazil and Mexico and Central America. and you need special permits to get sugar into America called TRQ status.
Yeah.
So we're working in those countries, and so far we've sold about 11 million kilograms, and so
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's good fun, and last month we were just awarded by the United Nations of one of the top 50 small businesses in the world, contributing to sustainable growth, and because a lot of the food innovations in the world are designed for affluent markets, and our technology is super affordable, and retrofits an existing facilities, so you don't need to build new factories. You can go along to an existing facility and retrofit our technology in, and so therefore it's an affordable solution. And so you got two parts of the world. You got some parts of the world eating too much and need solutions for less, and you got another part of the world where every day about 8,500 children die of starvation, and malnutrition is a huge problem. And what you want is good quality carbohydrates, good quality energy, for that population, so that they don't repeat the mistakes of some other markets. And so we work at both ends of that. And so the United Nations was like, yeah, that's the type of company we need to kind of take food solutions forward.
That's a huge solution, because like you were saying, like for the American markets we have too much, but like the African, Indian markets, they don't have enough.
Yeah, it's true. You got it in one.
Yeah. And it would see even playing field for everything. That's amazing. So you also wrote a book?
Yeah, so just published my first book. It's called The Insanity of Ideas. And I've been in the ideas business for quite some time. I think I started the ideas business in about 1990. And so if you're in marketing communication, you spend your entire day with ideas, and I just thought it was an insane business. So I wanted to track back into how people create ideas, how they select them, and are we doing a good job as a species picking the right ideas for the future? So the book explores, our humanity's love affair with ideas.
That's awesome. I liking this already. I'm just gonna keep it. So Matthew, then let's go into the book, and I want to tap back on the your business later on, if that's good with you.
Yeah, we can cover anything you want. Yeah,
perfect. So you were saying in your description that you wanted that we were gonna your book covers from like the Neanderthals till now, Einstein and Elon Musk, and then it was Neanderthals and Neuralink.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I was keen to kind of unpack what was the first idea on the planet. Okay. And so if you track back in time, and I think it's about 3 million years ago, you can find the first signs of actually humanity having ideas, and the shape of stone tools, and usually sort of chipped axes. And these emerge in Africa, and what I was intrigued by, there must have been a tribe of hominids that were looking at rocks and axes and going, what can I do with these things, and how can I make them better, and creating tools from them. And this all emerges well before humanity emerges. So, Homo sapiens maybe track back 300,000 years or so. So these are ideas that were formed by hominids on the planet, which we've inherited as a species. And if you even track before that, if you look at, well regarded these days, it's all over Netflix. Creatures like octopuses are well regarded to have ideas of their own. Well, they're about, as a species, they're about 100 million years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I quite like the idea that there were a species of octopuses all brimming and fuzzing with ideas at the bottom of the ocean, while dinosaurs were roaming the earth. So I really wanted to look at kind of that sort of genesis of ideas. When's the first ideas on the planet? And then sort of ask a question: how quickly are they picking up pace? So the first idea came out in maybe 3 million years ago, but the second idea doesn't really come along until 1.5 million years ago. So it took 1.5 million years to find the second idea, which is hand axes. So there's this slow creep of innovation, the slow creep of ideas, and if you would think now with humanity flashing forward to now iPhone 13. we can't last a day without a new idea. We can't last a month without a new piece of technology. We're a society that's driven by an absorption of ideas, but the planet and the species would go hundreds of thousands of years, even millions of years between ideas. And so I really wanted to look at the pace of ideas, the volume of ideas, and then work out how well we are at finding them, guiding them, and picking them. So it's an interesting track record of our species evolution and the volume of ideas that are now being created in kind of modern society.
So then I want your take, because you touched on something I was thinking about a lot the last few months. Is the internet and phones are great and all this, but it's like for our primitive reptilian brain, it is like the antithesis of like the addiction, pretty much. Like it gives us everything and then some that we want to see. And my thought was like, maybe we did this too quickly, kind of thing.
You might be right. Josh, you may be right. I think it's we can unpack it a little bit, but I think you're right about the speed. I mean, it's a huge social experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is, did we do it too quickly? The answer is you and I don't know. Well, I certainly don't know.
It may have been actually too slow, and then we're only seeing it now.
Who can really say for sure? But all we know for sure is it is a social experiment across the population of connected people. I think there's 4.5 billion people now connected on the internet. And of course, this has never happened before. The volume and pace of ideas that's being shared has never happened before. So is it too quick? Is it too much? It's probably the right question, and that's the question at the heart of the book. And say, well, look, is this a good idea or not? Is this deluge of ideas which is thrown at people all around the planet at a speed unparalleled in human history? Is it too soon? Is it too quick? Is it a good idea? And so the book tries to pick apart that, because I think it's a fascinating topic that you picked up onto. And whether it's a good idea or not, we're living in it.
Right. Well, we have no choice. Someone's listening to us on the phone. It's like, what the hell is Josh talking about? This is great.
Yeah. And so the other thing, which is this piece, is the mechanism of rewarding behavior was designed by a chemical compound which is dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
And dopamine stretched back into evolution about 4.4 million years. So you could track back dopamine as being rewarding behavior in early hominids and early human society, and it's really designed to reinforce like positive outcomes. Mm-hmm. So if you do something good and you get a bit of an advantage from it, a bit of dopamine will encourage you to do that again in the future. So it's a really important chemical mechanism for evolution, because it makes sure we kind of keep doing the stuff that keeps us alive. Right. So it's a really good compound, but it works brilliantly until we start playing around with it. So our friend Charlie Sheen plays around with it, because cocaine blocks the pathways of the synapses, and dopamine forms at the synapses and releases. So the rush you get from cocaine tends to be a dopamine rush. Gambling will do this to you.
Mm-hmm.
But social media will also do this to you. And so every time you get a like, a click, a reward, every time you get some affirmation in your social media feed, a small jolt of dopamine gets released. And so these ancient kind of reward systems, which were designed for small tribes of people, are now being fueled and manipulated and served by social media feeds everywhere. And provoking behavior and provoking responses, I think that's there's been now some really interesting articles from Harvard that come out, which have indicated that potentially it's not the best thing for us. So an interesting way to look at the too soon is our ideas have gone to such a pace, and such a scale, such a speed, but our biology is still in the caveman times.
It is.
We haven't had a good upgrade for 300,000 years.
I think it's like every 4 generations, maybe a small mutation happens. Nothing big though.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'm going backwards as well. So the good thing with biological ideas, I mean, this might be a bit of progress, might be backwards, but major upgrades, major software upgrades to the human condition, are few and far between. But major upgrades to our ideas, major upgrades to the information we put out and how humans operate, really come at light speed now. And so you got this pace of ideas going in one direction, but biology pretty much staying still. And so really, is that causing tension in society? Is that causing people to start having some degree of discomfort with the amount of information, amount of ideas? And are they feeling best fit to really deal with that and work their way forward into the future? So this whole area of speed and volume of ideas is really interesting, and it's also correlated with urban living, and that ideas are not good in a vacuum. So this podcast might be a bit dull if it's just one of us.
Oh, it is. And one of my first ones was me just chatting away, and then like halfway through my chat, I'm like, "Oh, that's a terrible idea."
Yeah. So you would probably find some of your best ideas come with people that you collaborate with.
Oh, 100%. I've learned more in the 9 months of doing this than me trying to go at this alone.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one I've noticed is like, sorry, I have to cut you off, but I've noticed like when you talk to people, the dopamine hit and all that, it's when they like, "Oh, you're right, but maybe you want to go this way." And as the person just driving the car, you're like, "You're right. I would never have seen that on my own though."
Yeah, and Josh, I think you this collaboration, you'll talk to somebody, they'll give you an idea, and that idea will spurn new ideas for yourself, and you'll pick up thoughts. And this interaction is how humanity forms ideas. Collaboration is essential to generating anything new. And a lot of the sort of the core ideas of humanity started with urbanization, which dates back 7,000 years or so.
Yeah.
But if you look at urbanization, where people are getting together, I mean, we now have over 50% of the population now urbanized. And there is about, I think, between the first city 7,000 years ago to about 1970, humanity added one city every year. And I think since 1970, we've added 10,000 cities.
Yeah.
And so if you look at patents as a proxy for ideas, about 1970, there was probably, I think, about 80,000 new patents a year. Last year in America, there was about 980,000 new patents.
It's something insane like that.
And China had 1.6 million. So the urbanization, the sharing of ideas, the technology tools, the collaboration that we have is unleashing the ability people to mix, mingle, share, and that just unleashes more ideas. And so the volume is we're just at the start of an explosion of ideas. We're not even there yet, and that we've just all got online. We're just all collaborating. The next 50 years, what's it going to look like if we're all collaborating, we're all generating ideas?
The key point is we're working together. We can generate ideas, but if we're not going to work on it, it's sad to say like how at least America is. I don't know about your side. We're so divided that we're actually not getting anything done because of all these ideas being pumped out.
Yeah, part of this is this. There's a scientist called I think he's Professor Barry Schwartz. And he did some work in what he called was the paralysis of choice.
Yes.
And which the paralysis of choice is if humanity likes a sweet spot. And I think the analogy was you go to a restaurant, and if there's too many things on the menu, you don't like the restaurant anymore. You think the food's not good. You can't find what you want. It's a bit like going onto Netflix and seeing, I don't know, 50,000 things available, but not finding anything you like. And humanity doesn't like to have people aren't geared up to sift through too many ideas. And so it's very difficult for people to be happy with their choice of ideas. And also I think with the media that we have, it's too easy to get confused. And the social media platforms like confusion, because confusion generates content. Well, clicks generate revenue, and so they promote the ideas that are the most divisive, the most provocative, because they provoke a response. And without a response, they're not gathering data on individuals. Without getting data on individuals, they can't sell you to advertisers. And Facebook, Twitter, and make 80 to 90% of their revenue through advertising. So their algorithms designed to promote the content, which will provoke a response. And what that does is help create divisions. Because you tend to see more content that's at the extremities rather in the middle. So it creates this idea that actually people are in their corners fighting, but probably the reality might be very different. But the certainly the if you look at and take your ideas from social media and mainstream media, you'll get an idea that we are against each other simply because that's the content that generates the most revenue.
And I've just noticed it in general. Like I do martial arts, and so my head instructor is very very conservative. We'll put it that way. But then as some of the clients, we all, because I'm the higher rank, so we all have to like meet at a certain time with him. Some of them are a certain end, and they bicker like crazy, and I just sit there and I'm like, I jokingly mentioned once, are you guys on social media by chance before you come here? They're like, yeah. I'm like, Facebook is intentionally dividing you because if you're segregated, you're easy to sell to. If you both agree on something, they can't sell to you.
Yeah.
And that's where
yeah, I mean, it's a huge industry. I mean, I think it's a huge pervasive industry and only getting bigger.
It is.
And it's also quite well, I guess, integrated. I mean, you get something that starts on the social media. It'll be a tweet. It'll be provocative, but it'll come offline pretty quickly. And it'll go into mainstream media, and whether it's a tweet from a celebrity or a tweet from somebody being provocative. It's not restricted by the medium. It'll move off that medium into mainstream media, into water cooler talk, into the martial arts gym, into the dojo. It'll move pretty quickly, and then it'll circle back again. People walk out of your gym, back into their tweet and go. And so ideas aren't restricted by the medium; they'll flow between them all, and that's why they're so pervasive.
And that was the one thing, because they were joking with me because they know I have a show. They're like, "Oh, aren't you on social media?" I'm like, "Actually, I don't like it." I said, "I know I'm not promoting my show well, but it's like, why would I encourage a habit that's like scrolling is what the new smoking now kind of thing?"
I quite like that. I'm gonna keep that.
And
yeah.
And that's what I told them. Like, why would I like if I have something truly important to share, I'll take a photo, I'll download Instagram, post it, and I'll uninstall it.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I've made my entire career about selling things on media. So I am at the heart of people who have caused the problem.
But it was it was for your job though.
Yeah, but I did choose my job, so I don't really have a good excuse. So it definitely is going back to this idea you had. Did we do it too soon?
Right.
And all of these can be very good ideas, but they scaled so quickly, and again, without thinking through potentially, well, what would happen to society if we did all these things? And there are some positives, and there are obviously some negatives, but as it goes back to, we're living a social experiment, and is this a really good idea or not? And so, I think the whole area is kind of fascinating, because there's a red thread through humanity from the first sort of stone axe to all the way through to Neuralink, where they're trying to now put ideas back into your brain. So they're trying to connect devices straight into your brain that will give you artificial ideas, that will give you the ability to have better ideas straight in. So they're cutting out the sort of the middleman of the human brain to try and augment your mind to say, well, you need to think faster at another level. And so it's interesting to see, which is maybe we're in a interim program or interim time where it's difficult to deal with these things because biology isn't geared up for it. But go forward 100 years, 200 years, our friend Elon Musk will have solved that for us. Maybe we'll be able to better deal with it,
or we'll probably ready to be on Mars by then.
We would be better augmented to it. Yeah. So definitely there's a lot to kind of think through that, and there are also pieces where I think particularly in developed societies, we're already handing over some ideas to artificial intelligence already. And so,
oh my God, yeah.
So artificial intelligence already selects the content we kind of watch. It'll select the pricing on your plane ticket. It'll buy most of the stocks in the world. And of course, in America, there's quite a big debate now of should we let them drive us to work, and should we let them drive our cars? And so I asked the question in the book, well, where will we stop? At what point will we go, well, that's too far. We shouldn't let them have those ideas.
I would say it's like Jurassic Park, the famous saying, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it.
Yeah.
Or like we could, or yeah, it was just that I was actually talking to my one of my parents about that. I was just like, it was something about like I was reading on a Google feed about this scientist is actually trying to resurrect a mammoth. From mammoth DNA. I'm like, that's cool, but okay, where's the limit? Maybe the mammoth's not a problem, but let's go try making a raptor. Oh, that shit! Like then it suddenly is Jurassic Park, and they're running around killing everyone. It's like, but that's not enough. Let's splice it with 15 other things. It's like we're playing God at that point. We don't even know what we're getting into.
Yeah, and there's a yin and yang. So I think there's definitely scenarios where you go, well, that would be problematic. We shouldn't do any of that. But I guarantee you somebody is. Somebody somewhere in a lab somewhere is. And then there are other pieces to so I think there's a lot of people who make the argument there's 1.3 million deaths from road accidents every year in the world.
Right.
Which is a hideous statistic. And apparently around about 90% of them are caused by human error. So if we sort of embraced not allowing humans to have the idea to drive, but giving it to artificial intelligence, where would some other good ideas be? And to go back to where we started, around about 3 million people die every year from malnutrition. But there's enough food waste on the planet to feed another 800 million people or so. I mean, there's
it's insane.
So yeah, here's the insanity idea. So we've got in Las Vegas, we have so much extra food from the buffets. They have a system to feed it to pigs. So they take all the lobster and they give it to pigs, while on the other side of the planet, people are starving. So, if you said, and the United Nations has goals to 2030 to try and solve this problem.
Well, I heard that it was something like they wanted complete world peace, no hunger, no starvation, no this. I'm like, okay, those are great goals, but human nature, we're very violent.
They're not even going to get close to it. So unfortunately, the UN has put out a report, and I think for most of the goals, only I think there was only 4 countries were close to 10% of the goals or something. It was something very, very small. But if you then said, well, look, if there's road deaths of 1.3 million, we can hand it over to artificial intelligence that'll solve that problem, at least by 90%. What happens if we handed over this food redistribution issue to artificial intelligence at some point? Let's go 50 years in the future.
Right.
And say, well, we couldn't figure it out. Let's hand it over to something else. And that could save 2.6 million years. Would we think that's a good idea, or would we think that's an intrusion? And so I like to discuss that in the book as because it's trying to work out where we think the boundaries are. Where we think, look, we these ideas are ours and we're going to keep them, and we think actually we'll let those ideas, we'll let them roll on, and somebody else can do them, or another technology can do them, and because I don't think we know back to your Jurassic Park question of Jeff Goldblum of should we do it?
Right.
And so it's kind of just posing that question of, what should we ask our ideas to solve, or which ones should we say, no, that's for us to figure out? And I don't have the answer, but I know they're coming, and we have to figure them out because technology is moving at that particular pace.
Right. Yeah. So like a side note on, you were mentioning it throughout, I picked up on it. The one thing I think about with technology, and it's great, it fulfills Nikola Tesla's prediction of one day the world will be connected in one mind and all ideas will flow freely. I see that completely now with Tesla, especially with how the internet works. It'd be exactly what Nikola saw. But also I'm seeing 1984 dystopia at the same time.
Yeah, it all depends on who wields these ideas. And so I think one of the joys of particularly where you live is the liberation of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's buried deep into the heart of what makes America great, is that ideas are liberated and they're free. Whereas particularly if you move over towards places like China, there's much less liberation of ideas and much more containment of them. And there's I think it's now over 680 million facial recognition cameras throughout China to record your move. There's a social currency system to prompt the right behavior. There's been many reports of some of the biggest internet companies having to pull back some of the content they have because the ideas don't sit well with the government of the day. And it's not just there. It's Russia, it's Vietnam. Amnesty International had a similar complaint about Facebook in Vietnam, that content was being changed to fit a narrative. And so you've got these two pieces, which is one, you might have ideas rampant because they're free, and the other they're curtailed. And I think would probably agree that the curtailment of ideas leads to a dark state. You wouldn't want to put them in a box. And so, but how do you live comfortably with this deluge of them, and they're all running freely? You have to put up with some discord and disagreement over them.
Right. You have to allow a platform for people to speak freely, and that's very hard for how polarized, at least the Western society is.
Well, this goes back to what you just said about although all ideas are free, they're all not distributed equally.
Right.
So it's the provocative ideas which get the gravity on the platforms. Mm-hmm. So the neutral ideas, the ideas that are in the middle, the ideas that are balanced, the ideas that take both sides of the story, they just don't get the traction because of what you said about segmentation, about profiling. So I think the challenge isn't whether ideas should be free, because they should be liberated. The issue is how do you deal in a world where not ideas are shared equally, and that the provocative and the divisive ones get shared at a level much higher than anything else. And that's the piece that's destructive. It's the piece of promoting the items that provoke a response is the piece which makes things problematic, I think.
I think so too. And the one thing I find it amusing, you see it, but the people won't, is like this fish tank. I have a bunch of plants more over here growing, and I actually was growing like a crop, like corn, and it was great. It grew quick. I actually had to pull it out and plant it because I'm like, it was growing too fast. But I was like, this is a very primitive old technology called aquaponics.
Oh yeah.
What if we take it on a whole nother level? Then there shouldn't be ever a problem with food. Relatively low energy, solar panel and a battery, and you're good to go, kind of thing. But like, what's holding us back though?
Yeah, look, there's I mean, I do think in terms of just if you look at some kind of being optimistic, the pace of change of some things have been really, really positive and surprising. So alternative proteins. If you look at kind of the pace of, Beyond Burgers, artificial meat, not artificial meat, that's the wrong word, but vegetarian meat, the
Okay.
pace of change. The pace of change that's come through and the wide scale adoption of that has been surprising to me. The next big one, I think, will be cellular meat. I think that will be incredible. And cellular fish, it's already approved for Singapore. And so meat grown from stem cells, so you can not have to grow the cow to get the meat, is already been approved in Singapore. There's always brands that you can go to restaurants and eat now. But that technology is the next wave of I think, big new ideas, which will help cut out kind of erosion of everything from the Amazon to better use of land, to less use of water, to less methane from cattle. That idea is at the tipping point of becoming big. So there are some definitely good ideas out there, which I think will scale quite quickly.
So there was I had a huge kick at one point. I was watching indigenous people, the last like actual hunter gatherers. And as I watched them, I saw it, the whole dopamine reward system and all that with them. But like they would find honey and it was the best thing ever. They ate as much as they could because they know they're probably not going to find it for weeks on end. And it was just one of those, they ate very little meat, but so touching on the Amazon thing, it was both the African and Amazonian tribes. As I've watched them, I'm like, there's no soy product ever. I'm like, I mean, realistically, you're not going to find a soy patty burger in the middle of the desert kind of thing. You'll find the little antelope or whatever, but you won't find a soy patty. I'm like, how far is too far then for us? Because like soy, if you eat too much, it actually produces too much estrogen for both men and women, and which we're not supposed, like both parties don't need that much hormone. So then the cellular one, what happens? What's the consequence that we could measure for that?
Yeah, again, this unpacks kind of this recidivist history, and so I mean, what I like is you're saying we've adopted ideas, they're all great, they've hit the news, but is it a good idea? And is it too early to tell? So a parallel example is in 1900, there were I think 4,100 cars sold in America. About 1,500 were steam, 1,500 were electric, and only 900 were gas. Mm-hmm. So in 1900, we had 70% renewable energy cars.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's probably in America, it's probably about 2%. So we kind of went the other way. And because the better idea at the time was gas cars, they had better mileage, and it was the roads were terrible. There was no, you needed electric refueling or electric solutions were less plausible. But rather than fixing those problems, we thought the better idea was gas. And it was only wasn't quite true, but there's only sort of 50, 60, 70, 100 years later where you saw the consequences of a gas-powered world with looking at carbon emissions. And so similar problems could emerge with new ideas we're looking at. What are the 10, 20, 30, 40-year consequences of some of these ideas? And there's two things. One, I don't think anybody's stopping to look at it.
Right.
Because we're too busy monetizing it. And two, the ideas are getting bigger and badder than ever before. Like badder and like they're scalable. Right. There's more capital behind them. So there's two things. The ideas have more potency, more power, and they pack a bigger punch. So if it took 80 years to see the problems of carbon emissions, will it take 80 years to see the problems in some of these changes we're talking about?
Right.
Maybe not. It might be condensed into, we might see the problems quickly within 10 years. And so again, back into to this this power of choice. Are we making the right choices? And if we are making the right choices, that's great. But if not, who do we select to make the best choices? So one of the things I do in the book is also try to unpack, who does make the best choices, and how do humans delegate choices to various people, which is another kind of interesting side topic.
There is. And actually, I want to throw in something really quick. I was listening to a lecture on fasting, and the guy was talking about the different. He's like, so lineage. She's like, about 13,000 years ago is about when we figured out agriculture and when we started actually farming our stuff. He's like, back then it was small crops, just enough for your family, wasn't really a problem. He's like, but he's like, come around like your 7,000, 8,000 years. He's like, it was large scale. We aren't hunter gatherers anymore. We just walk to our neighbor, pick up our food, and walk home. He's like, he's like, our main function is fast and famine. He's like, so our ancestors used to go for a couple of days without food. We can't barely go about a couple of minutes without eating something.
Yeah, I think again goes the infrastructure we have is now so fast, is so spontaneous, but the biology hasn't changed.
And that was the whole point of his lecture. He's like, in the scheme of things, he's like, our whole existence is like nothing to this earth, and we've just recently, in this short existence, sped up things that we've never done for. He's like, we need at least a couple 100,000 years to adapt to this.
Yeah, and I think the piece which I find really interesting in this chat is the consequences of ideas. So you're asking about soy, is that a good idea or not? Well, it depends on the consequences. But if you look at even agriculture, let's assume agriculture was a good idea. Let's just assume for the sake. But that agriculture also has knock-on consequences. So prior to agriculture, obviously, as you said, with hunter-gatherers, people were moving around. The resources were very hard to come by, so there was no surplus. And so no surplus was much less hierarchy in society. And so when you have more surplus, you start to get more hierarchy. And so once you get agriculture, you start to see things like cities emerging. But once you start seeing cities emerging, you start to see things like slavery emerging. Mm-hmm. And there's very few examples of slavery in hunter-gatherers.
No, because everyone's trying to keep each other alive. They're not.
Yeah, and if you got to drag somebody along with you and feed them, it's not a good idea. And so agriculture is a good idea. Let's agree. But 7,000 years ago, humans came up with I think the first examples are in Uruk, in Samaria in 5,000 BC. And slavery became an idea. And so the unintended consequences of agriculture in some ways is a surplus. And an unintended consequence of surplus is a horrific idea which has been repugnant for 7,000 years. And it's a way of saying we might not know what the consequences of our next ideas will be, but we're barreling into them at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah, and that's the alarming. It's kind of like, how did I phrase it to someone? It was like for plastic. At the time, it seemed like a great idea, genius. and it was genius at that time. But now, what, like 30, 40 years later? No, plastic started in like the 30s, right?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, the mass scale adoption of them was probably, I'd say 60s, 70s. That's sort of scaled from there.
But there was no like, and it still is a brilliant resource, but it's like the stigma is you get whatever and you just throw it away. I love these like guys who are taking the resources that are not going to pollute the earth, but repurposing them and making houses, huge ones like we're in, for under $10,000, and they'll last like 500 years too. Yeah, but it's like, but because it's plastic, people are like, oh, it doesn't work. But I'm like, our biology doesn't really care. As long as it's like a cave, we're good to go, kind of thing.
There's a sort of an interesting dichotomy in things like plastics, because the problem with it is they're built to last. But
for a long time.
But there's so much of our society is disposable.
Yes.
so kind of, if you could pull those two ideas together and say, built to last, why can't I just make one of them and keep it?
Say that's what I do with this guy. I've had this for like 8 years.
Yeah, he's a good thing. Keep a hold of that.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's definitely challenges in there. And one of the other threads that's picked on is not just the good things we do with ideas, because there are some brilliant ideas and some of them are really exciting, but also we tend to have when there's particularly a new idea, we like taking it to war pretty quickly. So it doesn't matter whether it was a stone axe or an arrow or gunpowder. We worked out how to way to take it to war pretty quickly.
Yes.
And kind of what I think was fun to kind of, not fun is probably not the right word. One is
Interesting.
to look. Yeah, that's probably a better word, Josh. Interesting to look at in the book was looking at how the Russian military, the Chinese military, and the American military started to talk about artificial ideas, and how they've both the Russians and the Chinese have declared a new arms race in artificial intelligence, and have put ambitious plans against it. Have literally thousands of scientists and billions of dollars working on how to take artificial intelligence and apply it in warfare.
If it hasn't already happened.
And there's a company in Guangzhou which has launched this drone called the Blowfish A2, which is an artificial intelligence drone which can swarm, it can kamikaze, and it's about the size of a Labrador. It can be armed with grenades, machine guns, anything you want. You can buy it on the open market already. So already, if you went to an arms conference and you wanted to buy a Blowfish A2, you could place an order for one and have your own set of artificial intelligent swarming machine gun enabled drones. And
that's a terrible dystopia recipe right there.
Yeah, but it's kind of now. It's like you can get them now. I mean, I wouldn't say you can order them on Amazon, but they're available and they're in the market. And so what's going on behind the scenes, and how quickly is this going to be applied? And so one of the things that I looked at was technology through warfare, and how quickly, like the humble punch card. The punch card was invented for the U.S. Census in about 1890. Because in the population of America was 50 million people by 1890. And so doing the census by hand was taking 5 years. And so it was more than humans could possibly do. So they needed another artificial system to do it. So this guy borrowed the punch card idea from a loom in the UK and applied it to the census and did really well out of it. But thereafter, this punch card got weaponized quite quickly, all the way through to the first true computer, which was commissioned by the American defense during World War II to help calculate, amongst other things, some degree of knowledge for the completion of the nuclear bomb. And so technology which was designed to help humanity was quickly weaponized very quickly. And so looking at that as an area of where will that go, and how quickly will we see a world where artificial intelligent drone strikes will be commonplace. I think is another one of your ideas of like, that seems like a bad idea. And the United Nations came out and said, look, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't do it.
Well,
would like all countries to stop. And the American military has said, yes, we agree that there should be no artificial ideas in the theater of war. There should always be a human in charge. But however, the Russians and the Chinese didn't say the same. And then the Americans said, well, look, we agree they shouldn't be deployed in war, but that doesn't stop us inventing them. So even though the United Nations said we shouldn't do it, all the major powers of the world decided that we'll invent them anyway. We'll just decide later whether we use them or not. So,
but it's like we have this freaking RoboCop over here. We don't need human intervention. It'll just follow by the rules. And I actually had a guess. We were talking about algorithms and how because of the human writing it, it has a bias.
Yeah.
By nature, the algorithm will be biased. And that's where I told him, like, yeah, he was telling me, I guess Amazon was trying to hire people strictly off algorithms, and that ended terribly for them.
I can imagine.
Because and I even asked him, like, how did that work? Like, how did they make that work? He's like, well, for the first like 10 years, he's like, it wasn't the company or anything. It's just they were moving heavy packages. So predominantly they wanted strong back men. They weren't against women, but it was like they're lifting 100, 200-pound stuff constantly. Like you would want a strong person to do that. But he's like, so the data said men are the prime choice. They just took their data and put it in the algorithm and said, go.
Yeah.
The algorithm wouldn't hire women because that's what the data. And I told him, like, that's exactly the problem. Like, if you look at the data for air quote criminals, it's going to be lean to one group, and then the algorithm or robot cop, whatever you want to call it, is going to oppress them even more than before. And your goal was to not oppress them.
Absolutely. I think, garbage in, garbage out. And so if the algorithm is based on false logic, if it's based on bad data, if it's based on biased data, then everything else will be derivative from it. And there's plenty of hideous examples of this going wrong. I would think on a path of 100 years, some of that will get ironed out at some point.
Yeah, at some point.
But what damage will be caused in the meantime is again going back to our issue. If you're playing around with a box of matches, well, how much damage can you really do in the meantime? Maybe not that much. Maybe a bit, but not that much. But we're now playing with kryptonite.
We are.
And in a connected world, a bad idea, which is you and I are discussing, it can be connected to literally millions of people tomorrow. And that speed of spread of ideas is also new. And in I think it was 1890, just before the invention of the wireless telegraph, it took 72 days to get a letter from the UK to Australia. That's kind of one way, and to get a return, it was 72 days back.
So pretty much a year, half a year.
So to get a bad idea from one place of the planet to the other place of the planet, and then get a response back, it took half a year. And so cities were less connected, communities were less connected, bad ideas were more localized and didn't spread. Same with good ideas as well; they were more trapped. But now good and bad and insane ideas they're limitless and borderless, and they'll travel anywhere. Before anybody can even check and to ask that question you asked, Josh, is that a good idea? And I think we've seen the spread of bad ideas during COVID, and it's such a hot topic. But stepping outside of America, even in Iraq, 700 people died through ingestion of a poison which they thought was going to be a COVID cure.
Yeah, it's insane. And like
every pocket of the world.
It is. And I've realized in general, it's sad to say there will always be those pockets that just do what they're going to do, and you can't really talk them off the cliff kind of thing. And, but the crazy one is COVID itself is a really touchy-feely subject. I got it, so I don't care about talking about it. But that was the biggest thing, is where, let's put it in my perspective. My current work, they knew people were infected and still sent them.
Yeah.
And they all knew they didn't wear masks. So it was like, okay, us unsuspecting employees were assuming they're clear. We got sick. They pinned us for their mistake. And then they said, you're claiming COVID, but you don't actually have it.
Right.
And one of them actually asked, like, where did you get this information? And he's like, oh, the internet. It's okay. I'm like, oh, yeah, because I read it on some crazy conspiracy website. It's completely okay.
Man, look, first of all, I'm glad you're doing good and feeling better.
Thank you.
Did you get it this year or last year?
December of 2020.
2020. All right. So you're almost a year in.
I would have been fine completely if it wasn't for that crew.
Yeah, I think there's it's weird to see how the world has done it. You know, I live in Singapore, and Singapore is 82% vaccinated.
Okay.
We have a very different system to America. We have a system where you know, when the government puts out an order, we follow it. So
Yeah, there's no questions. Just do.
and we already have a system which is already on your phone. You've got your vaccination status. Every restaurant, every cafe, every bar, everywhere you go, there's a little white box. You tap your phone on the box, and it matches up your data with the phone. If you're clear to go in, it goes green. If it's not clear, you don't go in. So the whole country's organized. But there are compromises to that, which is obviously, you know, what, again, going back to some topics which make America great, which is you know, what's compromised is freedom.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea what the perfect system is. I just live in a very different one. Now, on the other side, my family in Australia, they're all still in lockdown.
Yeah. There's like they get a sniff of COVID and they lock it down.
They're going crazy.
It's insane. I was talking to an Australian when I was first starting this, and he's like, "Yep, we're in lockdown again. We were just off it like a week ago. Is they will probably be on this for 3 weeks. We'll be free. They sniff corona, and we're going to be locked down again."
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean,
I don't either.
I don't get it. And you know, one of the great joys that I had the other day, which was maybe you watch some of it or not, but the UFC is quite high profile here, and it gets a lot of broadcasting.
Interesting.
And so the UFC when they returned, I think was it Houston? They had a full capacity crowd. The energy from that, watching it here in Singapore, I was so excited. Yeah, I was so excited to watch the broadcast. I was like, I didn't realize how much I missed it. Because kind of after a year and a half of watching, you know, at the Apex and Fight Island, and sure, it was all great, and I'm glad they did it. But the energy that came from the crowd, I was like, wow, it's good that it's back.
That's a big one. I'm just gonna double check. How long do I got you for? How long do you want to go?
You stop me when you've had enough.
Okay, never mind. We'll probably go to like 6 a.m. for you. But that's the biggest one I've been telling people, because I'm going to a martial arts event.
What martial arts?
It's Kempo karate.
Oh, wow.
It's essentially like the dirty martial arts. We're not like the classical, like fancy whatever. It's like you get in, you break shit, you get out.
Fantastic.
Pretty much. How I explain it is Mr. Miyagi teaching Cobra Kai what to do. So you'll be like, Daniel-san, if they fuck you up, be sure to fuck them too.
I like it.
But so our Grandmaster's coming on October 2nd to my studio. Wow. I'm super pumped. And literally, I was telling my instructor, I'm like, I'm so pumped that we're getting to do a sporting event in person. It's a small group because they're trying to get it to go, but not kind of thing. And I'm like, I told him, what's the price? I don't care. This is too cool, kind of thing. I'm like, it's been like 2 years. I'm itching to do something.
Yeah. That human interaction is kind of important. It's also the energy you get from collaborating and working with people in live space. And so I kind of described it to somebody else. They said, well, we can Zoom now. We can do anything. It's like, yeah, but there's a very big difference between watching a kind of music video on TV to actually going to see a concert.
Oh yeah, the just the energy off the people is worth the trip. Even if you don't like the band, like just how we are. Like I joke with my coworkers and my martial arts buddies, but I'm like, how we are as creatures I would almost say we have a sixth sense, not like the I see dead people kind, but it's the we can pick up on so many micro things, like their energy, their vibe, whatever you want to call it. But you have to be in person. Like the video is nice, you can see what's going on. Like right now, I see you're looking at something, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
But if it was in person, I know, and I'd be like, oh, he has to check his phone for whatever.
Make notes as I go along. I like to make notes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So if you say something, I don't interrupt you. I kind of keep that thought and
See,
then
I thought it was for some reason your phone. That's where I was like, he's whatever hour he needs to talk to his American client too.
No. I like if you're talking to somebody, I like to make notes while I'm talking, because you might say something and I'm thinking of that, and so I'll make a note so I know to come back to it rather than trying to stop you in the middle of it all.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, that's the biggest one. I've just been telling people, I'm like, back to the hunter-gatherer thing. We all, as hunter-gatherers back whatever thousands of years ago we could tell, oh, hey, hypothetical name, Jimmy over here is struggling. Like you said, we need to go kill an extra elk, go feed him so he can go out because he's a good hunter, kind of thing. But nowadays we're literally on our phones. It's like, what kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I think it's the community is what we're missing, because we are very social creatures, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I think there'll be a bit of a rebellion against us in over the next 5-6 years. I mean, some people have said it's going to get the roaring 20s again, and that people will find ways to reconnect and re-engage. They'll get back out. They'll get back to the woods. They'll do all those things. So I think there will be a natural bounce back.
Okay.
And I mean, I think that's because you said it's kind of human nature, particularly with travel. I know so many people just itching to travel, itching to go somewhere. And obviously I live in a small island.
I actually want to visit your small island.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great island. So nothing against this island, but it's sort of, it feels, after a while, it feels like you're living on the Truman Show, that you can't get off. Every time you want to get somewhere, they won't let you out. So I think there's just a natural urge to get somewhere, and particularly my colleagues and friends in Europe, they're all now back on the road, back traveling, back connecting with people, and they're enjoying the experience. So I think 2022, there'll be more of that. And then 2023, I think will be quite a wild year. And I feel sorry for the group of people who maybe, finish university or are looking for that gap year and had that opportunity to kind of travel and just get away and ended up spending a year in lockdown. I feel sorry for those people, because that's a very good year of your life you're probably not getting back again. For somebody like me, it doesn't matter so much, but if I was 22, 23 and looking for my gap year, that's a damn shame of a year to miss.
It is. And it's actually kind of sad. Where I am in Los Angeles County, we have lockdown, but not lockdown. It's weird. But there's a college nearby, and it's one of those, I see all these people going in and out. I'm like, great, good, they're back. And one of the college kids was walking to go get a coffee just because he needed a breather. And I'm like, hey, so when are you heading to campus, kind of thing? And he's like, oh no, we have to do all our work in our room.
Oh,
we're doing Zoom calls in a dorm. I'm like, well, why don't you go back to your place at that point?
That sounds very depressing.
And that's where he said, like, he was a local, but he's like, there's a lot of foreign students who were coming here, to have their freedom, do their thing for a year in America, and he's like, and they're just stuck in their dorm.
Yeah,
I think wow.
I think that would drive me. That would probably drive me crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people who have lost a lot, lost lives, lost loved ones, lost jobs, lost money. I mean, there's been a lot of heartache. But yeah, this experience of young people who've lost the chance to kind of enjoy that period is also, a great shame, I think.
And there's a new, like our phone conversation earlier, there's a new social experiment I'm seeing happening more potent than it would have. It's like how we went about a year and a half with no work, no rent, at least in America. I don't know about anywhere else, But so the kids coming of age were first introduced. Oh, the government will pay for everything.
Right.
So now that the government's cut the cheddar off, they're like, well, the government paid me to play Fortnite, so I expect my work to pay me to play Fortnite, not actually work. And it's interesting. We're the place I work for, we're losing people left and right because they're like, oh, this is actually work, and I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Look, unfortunately, I think no substitute for hard work in life. Well, actually, if there is a substitute for hard work in life, I haven't found it. So I might not just be very good at it, but most people I know who have been successful, whether they've been successful young or successful over their career, have put a lot of effort in, a lot of hours.
Yes,
and even the podcast that you do, you must be what 140 episodes or something
like that now. Yeah.
It takes work and dedication and hours. It's yeah. I mean, it's not just a spare time hustle. It's a lot of effort that goes into these things, and you get a lot out of it, I'm sure. But a lot goes in.
Yeah, and how, like, one of my coworkers know I do it, and he's been giving me small critiques here and there. But he's like, "How much do you spend editing that thing?" I'm like, honestly, I actually just, other than the introduction, if like we don't fully go into formalities and say exactly where we live, I just cut that part out. That's personal information. No one needs to know about that kind of thing. After I'm like, other than that, unless the guest specifically says cut this section out, I just leave it. But I'm like, it still takes me 30, 40 minutes an episode. And there was one point I was batch editing them at like 15 a shot. So it was like two days straight. Now I got it down to like 3, and it's not insane.
Yeah, I think raw is good. I think they're all meant to be conversations. They're meant to be eavesdropping into people chatting.
Exactly.
And I think there's a wall to being polished, and sure, there's a time for that, but there's also a time for just raw. And the beauty with this type of content is people can drop in and out as they want. They could leave it for a while. They can pick it up again.
And the great thing.
What drove you to start all this anyway in the first place? What was kind of behind you kind of driving into it anyway? So
I've always wanted to start a podcast, but I had this terrible fear back when Twitter at its mob where heads were rolling for no reason down the street and just canceling everyone. Well, they are now, but it's not as effective. Yeah. But that's where I was like, oh, I want to do it. And I was watching Joe Rogan. I'm like, I'm going to be like Joe. If one of the days I'll be on a show kind of thing. Jokingly, I'm like, I'm going to get drunk and we're going to do drugs. It's going to be great. But the crippling fear of Twitter mobs came into play. Now that I've been doing it, I'm like, oh, wait, that's free advertising. Just please curse my name kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you find sense of kind of freedom, liberation, enjoyment of just being able to talk to anyone, anywhere?
Yes. Like this, I would, in a normal circumstance, I'd never be able to talk to you.
Yeah. Mikasa Sukasa, me neither.
Right. So it's just great. I've talked to people all over the world now, and it is like, I tell one of my guests explained it to me. He's like, the person that you're interviewing gets to be shown as a trust authority. You get to pick their brain freely and talk with them. And then the people listening get all that benefit. They're like, it's a 3-win situation. Why wouldn't you do it?
I remember having this kind of epiphany, which is I was working in this company, and we were brought. This is kind of slightly before podcasts sort of get big. We were brought over to San Francisco for a week. Okay. And they brought really interesting people in to talk to us, and so just a group of eclectic, really interesting, smart people. Everything from, there was an ex-prime minister of the UK, all the way to head of data and technology at Google. It's just a range of really interesting people. And I left that week thinking, geez, I got smarter that week, and because it was just osmosis through just these listening to these conversations. And I got back to work, and kind of the conversations went from here all the way down to here. Back as soon as I got back to work, and I felt really deflated because it was like, well, where are all those good conversations go? Where's that great stimulus? I'm really missing that. Mm-hmm. then one thing I found with podcasts, when they start to take off, you could eavesdrop on those conversations again.
Mhm.
So although I had the great experience being taken to San Francisco and listening to them, once that experience was gone, they were missing. But when podcasts took off, I could suddenly start cherry picking ideas from people all over the planet, and effectively for free, and eavesdropping in some really interesting conversation. I think that's the beauty of podcasts is you can be a fly on the wall of some of the most interesting conversations that normally you wouldn't get access to.
And that is the biggest thing. Like for me, I've been teaching myself. I think you can see the books on top of my wardrobe.
Yeah.
I've been teaching myself business and this and that. And the funny thing is, like, the market crashed in 2020.
Oh yeah.
The March one. That's what started for me. I was like, oh, there are people crying like Beelzebub shitted everywhere, and then there's people dancing in the street like it's the best thing since sex. What happened here? Why is this so? And so it started me down. Okay, what's trading? Then it was like, oh, trading is you're buying a business. So I learned business. Then I'm like, oh, business is just psychology. The psychology, I was like, oh, psychology is spiritual. And that's where it was one of those, as I'm going through, I thought to myself, I want to still, even if it's never, I know this will eventually pay me. The show never, but I'm thinking, if this show never pays me, I will truly be happy doing it for free the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So why won't I? And that's literally on my birthday on New Year's Eve. I was just like, I'm doing it. Bought a website, paid the subscription, started the next day.
Oh man, kudos to you. I think half the trouble is in life is getting started.
It is. That is the hardest part of it all.
And some of these things are like personal marathons. I mean, sort of, they always feel daunting when you take that first step. But after a while, you're like, yeah, I can do that marathon. I would have thought the mentality of training in martial arts would have helped you in that.
Yes, actually it did. So like for me, I guess statistically people quit like 80% of the time after 30 episodes.
Yeah.
Then when I fumbled on one of my first guests, I didn't fully comprehend, because I'm very introverted and awkward.
Yeah.
And so it was an army vet, and he's telling his stories of Vietnam. Beautiful story, by the way. I might actually go and re-listen to his story. But
what was his name? So I can go back.
So Charles Reed.
Charles Reed. Okay, I'll go back and find that one. Yeah.
But it was one of those. This is when the BLM split and the Congress rush happened. So my dumbass put two and together, vet and terrible events. Somehow in between, I've like, oh, what did you think of the Congress run? and he just like, well, I think it's a terrible thing and we shouldn't do it. And I could like immediately see his posture change. And I'm like, oh, sorry. I somehow put those two together. But then once they sent it and he was happy with it, I made a promise to myself, I will do 30 episodes. So that's buried kind of thing.
Yeah. Look, don't worry. The I think everybody's career, especially mine, has got a back catalog of bad mistakes. But actually, this going back to ideas, which is there's now this culture and ethos of the best entrepreneurs in the world. Have this fail fast mentality. You've got to make mistakes,
right? And
now it's a badge of honor, and I think I listed out. Just every luminary, they put this in their book, but particularly Richard Branson and Steve Jobs were, mistakes are what makes things. That's how you find the good ideas. You got to make mistakes, and I think that's completely true. You learn from them and you move on.
Yes, you do.
And I think the issue though I was kind of picking at with them is again, if they're personal mistakes that you and I are making in a podcast, the consequences aren't so great.
Right.
If there are mistakes they are making in businesses with capital, how many billions can be lost in that process?
Yes.
And how many lives will be destroyed in that process? And so that's kind of one thing. And the next level up is, well, what are they failing at? And this takes back to kind of another one of the themes of are they playing around with something which could have future consequences? Mm-hmm. And Neuralink is a good example. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I want to say, let's get into that, because that is one where, like, everyone makes the joke, oh, it'll work with everything except the Apple phone. But I'm like, the brain is truly the last frontier that we don't understand. And if we start sticking probes in to see how it works, are we going to like the monster we find, kind of thing?
Well, I think this is it. There's lots of threads you can pick out. So people don't really understand the brain. People don't understand consciousness to a large extent. There's a whole other part of spirituality that has not been unpacked. And also there's the chemical interaction between the microbes living in your intestines and through your enteric nervous system into your brain, which play a major role in our emotions and our personality. And so even playing around with your brain, you go, well, that may or may not have substantial changes if your microbiome is not healthy. So there are a lot of consequences to this part or to this direction. And there are some definitely some positives to be found and some noble intentions. But some of the mission statements from companies in the sector, there's one that was effectively saying we're going to create cyber organisms, and they were well funded, high degree of capital, a good trajectory on their way to an IPO. But their mission statement is effectively we're going to replace humanity. And that's it's a lot to play with there. And again, it's not a question of whether they're successful or not. It's a question of what will happen on their journey and how much damage will be done.
How far is too far? This seems to be the overarching question of this all.
Yeah,
is how far is too far, and we don't know.
Well, I think it's a live social experiment, and it's being fueled by capital, the market, expansion, population growth. So we're going to be living it. So it's one of the beauties of it, which is it's a bit like a roller coaster. Hopefully it'll work out well. Hopefully
they put all the bolts in. Otherwise it's going to be like, whee!
Yeah, I mean, just because it hasn't in the past and some consequences doesn't mean it won't. But there's lots of ideas we could unpack. Longevity is another one. There are people working on extending the human life span, 100 years, 120 years. And there's some people who are predicting that the next generation is the last generation to die, and that the generation after that will be able to live effectively forever.
If you have the money.
If you have the money. And so one of the things I was exploring in the book is, well, what you just said about money is probably the most important piece, because every technology, you have a two-speed world, minimum two-speed world. You have people who have it and people who don't have it. And if it's an iPhone, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But if it's an augmented intellect, if it's you can live forever, if it's these types of benefits, if it's you can replace your heart or spleen or whatever it is, and you could afford it or have access to it, and there's another generation or another population that doesn't, what does that say about the balance in the planet? Or what happens if it's somebody we don't like has it? So let's say North Korea or China has it first,
right?
And they keep it. they don't liberalize it. What will happen to the balance of the world from these ideas? So it's there's a lot of these things that we're unpacking now at a pace which is you can watch it on live TV. It's
amazing. Yeah. The one thing that Musk said for Neuralink, that like everything else, like monitoring you, music to your brain so you don't have the headphones. Somebody, okay, that's funny and cute and all, but that's not really going to hurt us that I know of, kind of thing. But the moment he said you can press a button on your phone and turn off emotions, I'm like, oh shit, that's not good. I'm good with the music in the head kind of thing, but I'm like, to say I don't fear anything.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother level.
It does make me think. He also said we'll be able to download packets of information. So his view was we'll be able to seamlessly share ideas, and all the kind of the context of that idea instantaneously around the planet. So it's a form of I think brainwashing, because if I show you an idea, okay, you might understand the idea, but your own personal filters, your own personal mental algorithms will decide whether it's good or not.
Right.
And your experiences, your decisions are different to mine. If I'm giving you not only the idea, but the mental algorithm how to decide whether it's a good idea, where does individuality come into play?
There isn't. So I don't know if you follow. There's a show called Death Note.
No, I don't watch Death Note.
Okay. Well, the first.
I might do now though.
I want to say you at least watch the first one, the first episode. Essentially, everyone has a Neuralink, and everything it goes because it's the brain, so that your eyes see what the brain tells you, kind of thing. So this guy hacks everyone's brain, and it puts a little filter over his head.
Right.
And he's running around, and it was back in it was early 2000. The idea, the concept was just foreign. But I'm like, as I sat there, and that was the second thing after the emotions, I'm like, what will we filter? What is true then? What if Neuralink, because it's hooked to the internet, what if I'm now literally there's now biohacking kind of thing?
Yeah, there's there's all sorts, again, back to unintended consequences, which is so. And we're seeing this even now, just with the debate about the security on Apple devices. We're seeing this on the ability for cybercrime and cyber terrorism to be prevalent. So in this world where we can't control the content necessarily on your laptop from being hacked, what happens to the content of your brain is similarly enabled and augmented. And how do we stop that from being adjusted, adapted, or manipulated in some way without even you knowing it?
Exactly, because if it can, if it can feed you music, what else can it feed you?
Yeah.
Is it going to be one of those, if I go to pick up my phone, there's going to be a literal visual ad I can't skip because I picked up my phone? If I take a shit, am I going to get an ad kind of thing?
The answer will be yes.
Yes.
And that there's an ad everywhere, and if not, somebody's trying to monetize it right now. No, it's definitely. I think, as I say, it's at a tipping point. And if we think the pace of ideas, and if we think the pace of and the volume of ideas is large now, I think in the next 10, 15 years, the volume of them and the speed of them will triple.
Definitely, especially with like DeFi and all that. Like, I guess Africa, they don't have a good banking system, so they're using like cryptocurrencies, and they're doing cryptocurrency loans. And Africa now is actually kind of growing because they have money flowing. But then on the same note, China has their digital yen. At any moment, if the government doesn't like you, they could just make 100,000 yen just disappear like that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, it's like, again, it's the overarching question of this whole podcast. How far is too far?
Yeah, I think and one thing I thought was interesting, and I'm kind of old enough to and it feels like ancient history, but it's only 10 years ago, which was the social media fueled explosions of the Arab Spring. And so we had this revolution, which is people powered democracies really changing totalitarian states, and we saw this explosion across the Middle East of places like Libya falling and governments changing and dictators falling. But you could see then, over the next 10 years, a lot of governments started going, well, hang on a second, that could happen here. And so the amount of controls, the amount of systems they put in terms in trying to control these types of platforms, these types of ideas, started to escalate. And in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, it's turned around to say, well, not surely we just control them. How do we exploit them? How do we use these things to our advantage, both domestically and internationally as well? And so these tools, which were generated as people power and democratization of of ideas actually got flipped around and turned around back to states to say, actually, they're now higher levels of control than kind of ever before. And the last I think 10 years or so has been not how the sort of the champions of the internet predicted it would be in 2010, where they said it's going to be a liberation of many things. And if you look at how it's deployed out in a lot of states, it's particularly outside of America, it's turned into a tool to control individuals, not liberate them.
Yeah, and that like we were mentioning earlier, China. Like my instructor went back in like '08 when cell phones were just starting.
Yeah,
and like there was the rudimentaries of like Google Pay kind of thing.
Yeah,
and he was telling me, he's like, I went in '08. There were still like old ladies riding their oxen in town. He's like, I go in 2016. He's like, there's no cash. The old lady riding the oxen, she's driving a car, kind of thing. He's like, but the thing is, he's like, it's all phone. He's like, they control you with your phone. He's like, in America, it's the greatest thing ever. We can do whatever. But he's like, if you walk into a 7-Eleven, they immediately, when they read your face, they know your balance and how much money you have, and be like, oh, you can't actually shop there. You don't have enough money. You're not allowed in. And he's like,
what? Keep going. Sorry.
Oh no, and that's where he's like, but they can also engineer it so maybe you were allowed to go in, but they want to punish you so you're not allowed in. And he's like, they were doing that literally as we were there.
Yeah, I got to mention, my first trip to China was, I think I first went probably 98.
Okay.
Probably did maybe 100 trips, and the pace of evolution, the pace of transformation, the pace of just growth has just been absolutely mind blowing. It's been just kind of amazing to just be a viewer of it all. But in terms of this ability to track, a small story, which is I dropped just within Singapore, I dropped my credit card on the street. But this is about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I dropped my credit card on the street. And so I reported to the bank, and they said, oh, look, somebody's already used it. And they spent $300 on buying something. It doesn't matter what it was. And so they said I had to report it to the police. And so the guy I was with, he said, there's no point reporting to the police. They'll do nothing. It's a pointless. It's just a credit card. And I went, okay. So I reported to the police anyway, because it's what you do here. And 2 days later, the police called me up and said, can I come in because they've caught the criminal? I went, so how did you do that? How did you do that within 2 days? I said, oh, it's simple. He bought the credit card in this store. That store has a camera going in and out, so we could track him going in. We could track him going out. There's cameras on the street to the bus, so we could track him down to the bus. There's a camera on the bus, so we could track him on the bus. We could track him when he got off the bus, so he got off the bus. He then walks to his apartment. There's cameras all the way to where his apartment is, and of course there's cameras going up to the apartment. Once it's there, it's very easy to find. And it only took them 2 days because all that system is linked. So it took 2 days to catch just a very simple common thief, but just because all of your movements are already kind of tracked. And again, if you're not doing anything wrong, nobody cares. But as soon as you do something wrong, it's available. But that technology is pervasive and everywhere, and growing exponentially. And I think there's a really good, really kind of a book that's just been written on some sort of very repressed areas of China where they're repressing the minorities, the religious minorities, and they actually have cameras in their houses.
Wow.
So the data was that if you're not behaving well, they'll put a camera in your house to track your facial movements and your expressions and your dialogue inside your home. Failure to comply and failure to follow the norms and in the strict guidelines will actually not do you well. You can be sent off to a
camp.
A camp. So this type of technology is which was designed to liberate is being turned around against people. Yeah, it's quite wild.
I did not know about that. about them.
I'll separately send you a link to the book because it's really interesting. The guy who wrote the book, I think, is an American, so you should try and chat to him. It's absolutely fascinating.
Whoever he is, I'll try to figure out his email and contact him.
Yeah, look, he's probably up for it. He traveled. I think the backstory is he traveled China, in 2017, 2018, 2019, researching this, and got into a bit of trouble himself. And I'll let him unpack his own story because it's absolutely fascinating. He's a really kind of courageous and brave guy because he kind of went out and do it. I'll definitely send you. I'll send you the name of the book. It's fascinating.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna get that one and listen to it. Listen or read it.
That's my top tip for the podcast.
Get that book and get him.
Someone else's book.
Well, we're okay. If you're gonna buy 2 books, you gotta get yours and then read his.
Yeah, look, so a bit like going to the gym, a bit like doing martial arts. Writing a book was a bit of a workout.
I bet.
And it's just a good kind of mental exercise to do. So it was certainly a fun thing to do, and also meant to be a bit provocative, and not necessarily have the answers, but just kind of put some questions out there about how we're dealing with this kind of content. And it's fun to see the reaction. One of the things about writing a book is you kind of go offline for a year.
You pretty much you have to.
Yeah, so you're just reading stuff, but you I didn't watch the news. So what I was going to tell you before when you mentioned the 2020 drop, I missed it.
Really?
Yeah, I missed it. I didn't turn on my news for a year. I didn't watch news, financial news, didn't watch any of it. And it probably wasn't the best financial decision I've ever made, but it was like I just missed it. There are so many things in the world I missed because I didn't even just Netflix stuff. I didn't watch any of it. So I got a full-time job and just was like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to write a book, put it through. So really I just dropped off the grid. And so then when you put something out, a bit like you're saying with your podcast, you want to see what sort of response you get. And so overall the response is great. It's a really good message from people. And I think it's also interesting to step out there and see the negative ones as well, because I'm sure you get them as well. But some of the negative ones are just as interesting.
Those are even more interesting because it's like they pick at you. One of those, I actually take it as a critique than a destruction, because I'm like, oh, they're saying this. I'm like, well, it's only one person. I'm not seeing like 15 people say it, so it's just their personal bias. I'm like, that's fine. If like 20 to 30 people say the same thing, it's like, maybe I am the problem.
Yeah, no, I think it's been fun. I quite like both sides, because it's like, okay, because everybody's got an interesting point of view. If everybody kind of just agrees with you, kind of maybe
nothing happens.
Maybe I missed something. Yeah. But it was interesting to get both sides of the debate. So yeah. If people get it, people read it, people love it, people hate it, it's all good. It's all part of just part of the social debate that's out there.
And your kind of thought-provoking concepts with the book, as you've been explaining to me, it's not like it's gonna upset someone to the point like they're destroyed emotional. I mean, okay, how snowflake we all are, but you're not going to destroy like the whole world with one concept. If anything, they're going to be like, wait, in a good way, it's a controversy because I don't fully agree with you, and here's why. And then the fun intellectual tit for tat gets into play, and then I don't know the percentage. Let's say more than 50% of the time, it actually resolves and is like, oh, okay, I agree on this, you agree on this. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an arm wrestle. I think. But everybody's got their pressure points. Everybody's got their kind of piece, which is immovable, and their lines they don't cross. So I'm sure there's an old advertising saying, if nobody hates you, nobody loves you, then nobody knows you.
Yes. It's all press is good press as long as they say your name correctly.
Yeah, so I think yeah, whether it's your podcast you put out, if you at some stage you got to find that audience. Somebody's gonna love it and somebody's gonna hate it. But I think it's part of the journey, and it's why there's the insanity ideas. In fact, the original kind of start of this book was I was doing a presentation a few years ago to some clients. We're doing a campaign for a country, so we're trying to present a new idea for the country, how we should position the country, what we should say about the country, and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And 40, 50 of us have worked on this idea for like, I don't know, a month.
Okay.
And we loved it. We thought it was the best idea. We were so excited by it. And we'd shown it to a few people. They went, oh, this is an awesome idea. And so we went to the big presentation. We're presenting to the tourist board of the country. We're presenting it, 45-minute presentation. Here's our idea. There's all singing, dancing, fireworks. It was fantastic. We sat down just thinking we're going to get a standing applause. And the board in unity said that was the worst idea we've ever seen. We hate that idea. You can leave now. And we all left the room going, how could we get it so wrong? How could we think an idea was so good, but actually another audience look at exactly the same concept and have completely the opposite approach or reaction? And so it was then that I thought ideas were insane, and that you could get so addicted to an idea that you can lose all track of reality, and lose all ability to independently kind of view it. So I came to the conclusion that ideas were always going to be subjective, and so that's the heart of the book. I can't think. I was really trying to think of a single human idea which was universally loved, but I really couldn't think of one.
Huh. So that's interesting. You put in that, like, the genesis of your idea was an idea to write the book. I like that. And I think that is what you're aiming for, and what a lot of us are looking for, the more open-minded thinkers, is what is the purpose behind it, kind of thing. What's the purpose of me having this thought? Kind of like how Buddhism teaches to be mindful, think of the positive, the good, not the bad. But it's one thing, you might actually agree with this, is what I tell a lot of my coworkers, because they're very negative, and I know I listen to motivational stuff. I said, okay, our mind is predominantly water and energy, and that's our thoughts. And they're like, right, like, energy is a thing, correct? And they're like, yes. I said, so thoughts are literal things. And they all sit there, and I'm like, so if your thoughts are a literal thing, and it's energy, which energy attracts like frequencies, if you think about negative, you're only getting negative back. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think about positive success, whatever you want to think about, call it law of attraction, whatever, I call it more like thoughts or things, you're going to bring that to you. But I'm like, the only thing we're missing is the origin. How did that happen? Kind of thing. And I think that's what you're aiming for too.
Yeah, I think there is a thing about karma. The more good you put out, the more good you get back.
Right.
So I think that's very true and quite insightful. And I think there are people who get lost in a dark place. And so it sounds easy to be positive. It sounds easy to
it's not though.
Yeah, it's and because life has a way of kind of throwing curveballs, and there's things that come at you every day, whether it's money, whether it's bank, whether it's family, relationships, whether it's just stuff that comes out of blue. It's kind of hard, and keeping this mindset of optimism is actually a skill, and takes discipline. It's certainly not easy, and so I love that you got it. I love that you've found it so young, compared to me. Yeah, it's very good advice, but I think it's also as you said, the genesis of it, where does it come from? It's kind of hard to find, and I think there's an interesting concept buried in there called willpower.
Yes,
and willpower is at the heart of what you were talking about earlier, which is this idea of not quitting, and particularly in martial arts, I think it hones your willpower. And willpower is kind of a this thing that's part of your brain, but it's above and beyond it. And willpower, strangely, is this force which allows you to do things you're not really sure that you thought you could or were capable of doing it, but allows you to push on. And I think willpower is essential for honing a optimistic view, because you need it, because there's going to be so much pushback against it.
There is. And that's like, for me, they were trying to give me the statistics when I was a younger kid about people getting black belt, and at whatever rank, it was like the one where pivoting, like 60% of people quit at this point kind of thing. And I was like, screw you, old man, I'm going to be a black belt kind of thing. And I did it. I got to black belt. And the funny thing is, thank you. I'm going for second in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
And the funny thing, I actually asked my instructor, part of my resolve, my will was I wanted to get to the point I was allowed to fight you, have the honor of doing a sparring match.
Wow.
And that's where my instructor's like, sorry, you're a martial artist, so you know what this means. It's not going to be creepy. He's like, I don't try to get intimate with my clients. And he's like, a fight is a very intimate situation as a martial artist. And I was like, well, shit, why did I even go so far? And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, so I can only shadow box you? And he's like, pretty much. I'm like, damn it.
Oh, wow.
But that's where I made a deal with him. I said, okay, if I get to this rank, which is statistically unheard of if you're not an instructor, would you actually at least grant me 1 minute? I'll pray to God I can survive, but at least 1 minute. And he's like, if you actually make it there, yes.
Oh, that's wild. You got to cash in that check. That's one you got to get. That's an awesome story. I like it. I like the singular focus to get you through to the next level. That's very cool.
And then I get punched in the face, and it's like shit.
Yeah, I think to get in the ring, I think is really kind of I think one of the truest forms of willpower, because everything should say don't go in.
Oh yeah, it literally bells and whistles.
To me, everything would say don't go in.
And that was me when I was younger. I was just like, why am I doing it? These guys have been doing it longer than me. They're going to crush me. And I wasn't wrong. But it got to that point. I realized that like every time I got hit in the face, it like resolved. It's like, okay, that's where I'm like, fail quickly, learn quickly. Then I realized quickly, like, okay, I have to protect myself now. This hurts too much. And the weird thing is that when you're growing in martial arts, you realize, oh, wait, blocking is not that important. It's okay if I take it on the chin. As long as I can just go with it, it's okay.
You're living in a world which is completely foreign to me, and I don't think I have it into me.
I would not recommend it.
No. I'll leave that all for you, my friend.
Thank you.
That's for you. I got ugly this way anyway. I don't need to be beaten up in the face.
We both have a face for radio.
I don't need it. I had a friend who was quite good looking who took up kickboxing, and his instructor, whose English wasn't very good, was training with protect handsome face. So he's trying to get him to protect his handsome face all the time because he kept getting hit. But yeah. Not for me. I'll stick to something a little bit more chilled. Thank you.
You'll do your like Tai Chi or something.
Yeah, look at anything that's it's a form, anything that's form of escapism, and non-combative, I think is useful for me. But that's just a whole nother story.
Yeah, so he's stopped it now, and also my instructor's not as angry as he used to be. But what he used to do. We all knew it was a 30-minute class. It was 2 hours kind of thing. And it was like a Navy SEAL gauntlet. He would have us do classic military breaking tactics where your legs are squatted and you have to hold it, but you have your arms out like this. And he had a pull on both. And if you moved in any way, he had a baton and he'd take out the back of your knee. It was classic military breaking tactics. And at the kid, I was just sitting here going, why does he keep hitting me?
Oh, wow. But respect for getting through it.
And the one thing I told my instructor, I said, my orange belt was the hardest test I've ever done. My black belt was a walk in the park. I'm like, it was a 8-hour Navy SEAL workout, which could have been done in 1 hour.
we went in with white geese, like white shirts, and we left with black because we were rolling around on the asphalt in like 100-degree weather with no water for 8 hours. And I'm like,
Wow.
my orange belt was harder than the black belt test. I'm like, you like, I will always say that no matter what test, that one was the hardest.
Wow. Look, I can't. I mean, kudos to getting through it, but the people who actually get through kind of these physical endurance where they're testing not just your obviously they're pushing yourself physically to the limit, but they're really pushing your mind to the limit.
Yes. No, that's more the trick.
And that's the bit of that I think I'm really interested in willpower, because it's the bit of allowing your mind to go to that level is almost harder than getting your body to go to that level.
And that's the crazy thing. As long as you have the willpower, it doesn't matter how hard it is. And that's the one I learned after how many years ago that was. I'm like, I was not physically ready for that, but I had the resolve that I wanted to be at the end at any cost. Yeah. So I'm like, little Josh was just like, all right, just keep going. Hopefully
I can see why getting through 30 podcasts was then the easier walk in the park.
Because to quit would be the worst thing for me to do, because then it confirms that, oh, no one cares about you.
Well, congratulations. I think you've done well.
Thank you.
It was great to chat with you. Great to hang out with you.
Absolute honor. Yeah, we need to get you to sleep and some rest.
It's 2:45.
Oh.
It's not too bad. I think I got a call at 8 a.m. So I got 5 hours or so to reset. So it'll be good.
Matthew, I would love to have you on in the future.
So Josh, I'm going to send you an email of that book,
okay.
Which is fantastic. I'll send that the email and hopefully get the guy on. And for your listeners, yeah, my book's The Insanity of Ideas, and you can find it on Amazon. And the company I represent is called Nutrition Innovation. So not available for sale in America just as yet. But,
I was going to say, can I order some sugar?
Yeah, I'll happily send you some. But yeah, we're a growing company. But yeah, we're working on all parts of the world first. So, but America's on the list, so we'll get there soon.
Good. And then when you do, I'll be sending you a postcard.
Yeah, look, I miss America. There's still so much to see. I've been to bits. Been LA, San Francisco, Kansas City, Houston, Dallas, Miami, Washington.
More places than me.
San Diego, New York, Boston, Seattle, Portland, Las Vegas. I mean, so, but there's still so much more of America I still need to see. And so look, hopefully I'll get off my Truman Show Island very soon and can come back.
Well, yeah, and then when you do, we should definitely be like, okay, I'm going to San Diego. I'm coming.
Yeah, okay. All right, my friend. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on 140 episodes. It's been tremendous to be part of it.
Thank you, Matthew. It's an absolute honor and pleasure too.
All right, man. Have a good evening.
You too.
Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're an awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations, you're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome, and see you next time.